It was Elul. What did we say yesterday? We said that Ani Dodi is from below to above. This is really the Indian of Elul. And right. V'Dodi Li is Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. Meaning to say that on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, there's a tremendous dose of Yira. The Indian of Rosh Hashanah is the Indian of a Melech. HaShem is a king, and the king comes out in all of his grandeur. And that basically creates a fear that will be with the person for the entire year to come. It's his storehouse, treasure house of fear for the whole Yirat Shamayim for the whole year. In order to get it, though, a person has to make HaShem his king, like we said in yesterday's parsha, right? Sum tavsim alecha melech. You have to place upon yourself a king. You have to place upon yourself a king. It has to come from below to above. And this is the ending of Ani Ladodi. We got through saying yesterday as well, like a little challenge, all avodas Hashem really comes from above. In other words, the whole point is that when you love Hashem, when you fear Hashem, it's not you doing it, it's Him doing it. He's the one who empowers you to do any divine service. So what does it mean that in order to get your gift for the whole year of divine service on Rosh Hashanah, you have to come from below, and so to speak, serve Hashem on your own in order to earn that. It's a contradiction, mine ube, right from inside itself. So we said that in reality, even this Elul service really comes from Hashem, in the sense that the 13 attributes of mercy are shining in Elul. And that's just like Rosh Hashanah is a tremendous arousal from above. Really in Elul there's a tremendous arousal from above. So then the question he asked over here, the famous question, why aren't all the days of Elul then Yomim Tovim? So he says, because there's a famous mashal of the king in the field. Right? I was at a Farbrengen yesterday and hearing what we hear every year.
Do you have other Farbrengens with time?
It wasn't yesterday, but no, I had you guys in mind, not to worry. And you were there. See? And whatever Rabbi Kaplan was saying over that, in the world, you know, it's always been that Elul is like a scary time, you know? And it's a time of reckoning and like basically getting yourself together, and it has a sort of dread that comes upon it. And until comes with Alter Rebbe with the king is in the field, and the idea is that the closeness and he's approachable, and it's an act of love and so forth. So, but as I told you yesterday, the king in the field is a mashal from the Alter Rebbe. It doesn't precede that, right? And the whole thing is about changing the month into a month of approach and a month of love and so forth. So people don't know that. People don't know that it comes from Chassidus. People don't know that it comes from the Alter Rebbe. So he said he was somewhere and he was sitting with a Chassidically challenged Jew. That's a PC word for it these days. And he said, like, he says, it's Elul, guys. Don't you know the king is in the field? Like, he's going to be in the field. You have to run. Like, he's right there. It's just, how scary could it be? In other words, like, totally missing the concept of what it means the king is in the field. You could take the same words, the king in the field, and keep your old, you know, antiquated ideas of what Elul is, and just ruin the mashal altogether. So basically, let's remind ourselves, what does it mean that the king is in the field? That's why I went into this story. How you doing? Welcome. What does it really mean that the king is in the field? Is that the king, this is an arousal from above, right? Just like Rosh Hashanah is, like, so to speak, trying to give you something, and Hashem is giving you something. But in this case, He's giving it to you in a way where He dresses down. In other words, He's coming to you in a way where He dresses down, and He comes out of His kingly robes, and he goes into your place in the field in order so that you can, so to speak, serve Him on your own. Now, this is not serving Him on your own, because if the king wasn't in the field, you wouldn't necessarily run out to see Him. Right? It is an arousal from above. He's still empowering you to do this service, because as we said a moment ago, there's no real service that comes strictly from yourself. You're empowered by Hashem to do everything. But this type of empowerment is not sort of like is not such an overt, blatant type of empowerment where it sort of takes away your free will and your ability to, so to speak, do it from below to above, because He is in the field. And that's the whole idea. That the idea is that the king, which is the 13 attributes of mercy, which is the same level of divine light that comes out on Yom Kippur, that comes out on the Chagim, which is why there's a question: is this should be a holiday? However, it dresses down and it comes towards us in a way that it just sort of gently urges us to do the avodah on our own. That's the idea of the king in the field. So this is Ani Ladodi, right? This is and based on Ani Ladodi is going to be there for your real gift and your real measure of Yirat Shamayim that you receive in the future. The last thing we said was that the first of these attributes of Ani Ladodi, I'll get one more of these if you want. Excuse me, not of Ani Ladodi. The first of these attributes of the 13 attributes of mercy is the name Kael, HaShem Kael, right? And Kael, we said, is containing all of the 13 attributes in one. It's like the source and collection of all of them. And what is Kael? We said it represents the Or Ein Sof. We went into a whole thing yesterday about that. And more importantly for now, we said that it's also really inside of a Yid. In other words, that this king is coming to you in the field is none other than really like your own self, right? In other words, panim v'panim, right? Hashem is going to greet you face to face. And what does it mean face to face? That when He sort of shines Himself on you, a countenance, Ya'er Hashem panav elecha, He shines His countenance upon you, it turns you to shine your countenance upon Him.
What is countenance?
What is what?
What is countenance?
Countenance is face, His panemius.
Looking.
In this place, countenance is the word for panav. Panav, His face.
Yeah, because we hear that all the time with the priestly rest.
Right, but it's panav, right? So what does it mean panav? It means His panemius will, right? That He sort of puts everything aside and just shows His love for you, and like a face reflects a face, you all of a sudden are urged, again, not like Matan Torah where you're sort of forced from the sheer magnitude of the revelation, you're forced to sort of jump out of your body. As it says over by Matan Torah, we mentioned yesterday, their souls flew out of their body, which means that they went all 100% in line with Hashem suddenly because He faced them. In this capacity, He's facing us, but as we said a moment ago, in this subtle way. So He's not forcing you, like He did by Matan Torah, to sort of give up your Gashmias and just like you were going to be on Rosh Hashanah, like Pashat afraid, you're not going to. But here it's like, it's a weekday, you can do what you want. It just happens to be that the king is in the field, which means that you're urged to bring this face of your own out to Him, which means to put aside all your shmutz and basically put your panemius will towards the mitzvahs. And this is called the Yisroel inside of you. What is Yisroel? It's the same Kael that you have in yourself. Yisroel is Yud, which means a continuous action. Sar, which means is dominating. Kael, which means Kael is continuously dominating over your soul. That essentially who you really are is, you're also a Kael, right? Which means that you are the Eibishter. His will is your will. And so when He sort of gently comes to greet you, your Yisrael comes out. Not automatically. You have to go and sort of search for it and remove the blockages, which is all of your foreign desires and your negative activity. But in doing so, you bring forth your panemius will, and this is Ani Ladodi. Okay, that's what we said yesterday. Everyone good there?
So, but He's already still kind of facing us to make it so that the Ani Ladodi can it's like only like a Lamatza Lamaila because He allows it to be.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's what we said basically yesterday. I said this little word. Now it's going to be even clearer what I was intending. Yafa koach haben mikoach ha'av. Right. Yafa koach haben means the powers of the Son are greater. Mikoach ha'av from the powers of the Father. In other words, they're better than the powers of the Father. Or you can read it: the powers of the Son are better because that itself comes from the Father. In other words, that He enables us to have this milamata lamayla. If He wasn't giving us the power to serve Him on our own, we wouldn't be able to serve Him on our own either. The whole thing is from Him.
Right.
What's the difference? In other words, it's that it's an arousal from above, which is like more gentle. It actually is more powerful. When I say gentle, I don't mean it's like a lesser arousal from above. It's an even greater arousal from above, but it's greater because it dims itself down and makes it look as though we can serve on our own. And He gives us that ability to, so to speak, serve Him on our own. Which means what's so great about it is that we can bring. We're the ones that sort of deliver the Kael in a certain sense, right? When He delivers the Kael, He doesn't actually show it yet. Right. He just sort of urges it to come out of us. Right. So that's why it's a greater revelation. He shows that the essence of the Yid is already godly, and He just sort of knocks on our door, and He allows us to do the producing of the light as opposed to Him. So that also comes from Him. Okay. Base, and we'll go on. Hine Yesh ba'adam b'chinas ir moshav u'b'chinas sadeh u'midbar. Inside of a person, you have a couple levels going on here. You have a settled city. The aspect of a person is called a city, and you have an aspect of a person called a field, and even a desert. Midbar, he eretz lo zarua. What is the desert of a person? It's a land which is not sown. Shehem maisim v'diburim v'machshavos asher lo l'Hashem hema. Which means this is all your thought, speech, and action, which is not for God. Right? The desert of yourself is in other words, it's a soil. What does it mean, a desert? It means that you can't plant anything there, which means nothing can grow there, no life can grow there. And what is life? Life is Kedusha, right? So inside of your negative thought, speech, and actions, your poor behaviors, as it were, there's no way for Hashem to dwell in that place. It's an unsowable land, right? When you have healthy and kosher words, so it becomes a kli, i.e. fertile soil to hold the Eibishter inside of it. And you can become a dir b'tachtim, you can become a little mishkan for Hashem. But in the negative words, the negative thoughts, the negative actions, negative by negative I mean against Torah, then it's a desert and nothing can grow there. God cannot find his way in there.
Wait, is this a spectrum or are these two different character traits?
No, they're two different things. No, they're a spectrum, basically. A sadeh and a midbar, but I think they're the same thing. Two different traits. But it's really a spectrum. In other words, the desert is nothing grows. Right. Right?
The sadeh is everything.
The sadeh is not. The city is really where it's happening, right? Because the city is where man dwells. Man represents the Eibishter, right? The one who sits on the chariot, the man on the throne. Mm-hmm. So the city is really the dwelling place of man, the dwelling place of God. The field, the idea is that it's not too far from the city, right? You're not in the desert, mamish, where like nothing can grow,
right?
Right, but you're not in the city either.
We're not talking about like the city being like the body, are we? The small city.
Well, it is, but in other words, in this case, you could turn your body into a city, or your body can be a desert, right? Because your body is the one who's making or not making this kli for Hashem. In other words, not really a desert. There's no field. There's no king. It's just an analogy.
Sorry,
what's that?
There is a king.
What's the difference between again about the city and the desert?
Right. So one is fertile soil, and one is not. Right. The desert is not fertile. And again, it's not so clear with that analogy regarding the city. The city is not necessarily fertile soil, but the idea is that there's life. Right? The city is filled with the most life, and the desert has the least life. And what is life? Life is Kedusha.
It's not like it has no life, the desert. It has life, but...
It has the life of the clippers. It has snakes and scorpions. That's the life that it produces. Okay. Ein tzurich lomar. It goes without saying, im pagam b'machshava diber ma'aseh. Right? We're not even talking about if a person literally blemishes his soul with its thought, speech, and action. Meaning to say that he sins, right? Elafilu gam inyani heter. We're talking here about even more refined things, even in permissible matters. Rakshem inyanim she'enam tzrichim la'avodas Hashem. They're just things that are not necessary for the service of God, right? We learn our harsh lesson every day. We read Sefer Shel Beinani, and we find out, wait a second, it's not a Beinani at all. He's like perfect, right? So you come up with a clear realization. You're either basically doing something godly or you're doing something ungodly. Unfortunately, there's no middle ground. There is no Beinani, right? The Beinani is already perfect. So this is what he's saying. Like obviously, if your desert is such that there's mamash snakes and scorpions that are like coming to kill you, that's for sure. You have to fix that. You have to kill the bad guys. But we're talking about even just being in the desert, right? In other words, being in a place where it's not even fertile ground, which means you're doing things which are not. You're just stam talking about nothing, right? Or you're just stam eating, even though it's not beneficial for your body. And the list goes on and on and on. We'll just stop there for a second, right? So any of these things also is a desert. And this is where you got to get out of. So he says, but this is devarim b'telim, right? This is basically wasted words. As it says, it's not the way of the king to make heard words of a simpleton, which means it really should never be coming out. V'dibar tabam. Right? It says you should speak of them. In them should be ikar hadibur. Only in them. You can only talk in words of Torah. There's no room for stam talk. It doesn't mean you can't, make the world holy by shedding light in a Torah way on things in the world. But stam to just be in the football game, as opposed to learning the Kabbalah of the thing. It's Dvarim B'Teli. Yeah.
But you can talk like normal words, like when you have to.
I mean, you can ask them, you can go to the bathroom, let's say, but it's not normal words. You have to understand. There's no normal words at that point. If you're just basically saying pass the salt because you need to eat your food, it's not normal words, believe it or not. Like, you're a Jew, you're holy, your eating is holy, your sleeping is holy. It says you should be able to tell a chassid even by how they sleep. Meaning what? It means you go to sleep at a certain time, you wake up at a certain time, you sleep on a certain side of your body. A good servant, he's serving his master even when he's sleeping. Why? Because his sleep is not for himself. He's sleeping in order to re-energize him, in order to go be a better servant. He needs to sleep just like he needs to eat, just like he needs to plow the field. In other words, he's a whole person. So there really isn't just like extraneous parts of your life that are not for the service of God.
Yeah, but while you're doing those things, you're still technically a chariot.
Exactly.
The man on the throne.
It doesn't mean no matter what you're doing, you can disconnect yourself from being a chariot the second you are really just doing those things ultimately for yourself.
Yeah.
So that's called the desert of life, right?
The desert of life is all the wasted things you're saying?
Yeah. In other words, again, it's almost like an attitude, right? Or like it's that extra. Okay, this is a very, I'm not trying to have anyone starve themselves, but it's like that extra bite of food that you just don't need. It's just for the taiva. Or it's an extra half an hour of sleep that you don't need, and you could get up. You're not even tired. You're just like, what do I need? I'm happy sleeping, right? It's basically your animalistic, lusts of the flesh, which overrides your sort of concentration on the task at hand, which is that you're here to serve God.
So all four elements.
Sure, all four elements can drag you down into this desert. And as it says, it's not the way of the king to speak like regular simple words. Obviously, a king also has to go to the bathroom, and a king also has to pass the salt. But even when a king says it, it's not the same. He's just elevated in his own way, right? V'zeu asher lo yashav adam sham. And that's what it means, that in a desert, in a parched desert, man cannot dwell there. That's why primarily it's different than the city, right? It's not so much the fertile land, as much as it's not a place that men can dwell. And Perush Adam, what does it mean, man? Who kamosha kasuv val demus hakise demus kamara Adam. As it says in the vision of the chariot, it's described on the appearance of the throne was the appearance of a vision of a man, right? That on this divine chariot that was perceived by the prophets, they saw a man sitting on the chariot. The man represented the world of Atzilus. Usually it's brought in Chassidus, right? And this represents basically godliness. So the man, God, right, has also 10 spheros at that level. And so just like he created us with 10 spheros in his image, is because the divine, picture that he forged for himself has 10 spheres in the form of a man. Again, not to confuse anybody, there's levels of divinity which are beyond that. And it's not to make exclusive that Hashem is, God forbid, just in the form of the man. But Hashem lends himself to being in the form of a man in order to relate to us. And this is the vision that they had on the top of the chariot, that God looks like a man. And the idea is that this Adam, where the pasuk says, Lo yashav Adam sham, in a desert, man cannot dwell there. This man is what it's referring to. The godliness cannot dwell in a desert. He cannot dwell in the aspects of your life which are extraneous, thought, speech, and action of the other side. Because it says, V'asuli mikdash. Right? You have to make for me a temple. V'shachanti b'socham kasiv. If you want him to dwell, this man to dwell and live inside of you, you have to v'asuli mikdash. You have to make him. You have to make a temple for him, which means you have to make a vessel and a chariot out of yourself, where he can live inside of those. And what are those things? Those are the letter combinations of Torah that come in your mind, come out of your mouth, and are forged into your performance of all your deeds. Okay, so you don't want to be a desert. How do you get out of it? So it says in the pasuk, you will search out from there Hashem your God. Perush, Kihine Kasiv, V'yar Elokim es ha'or ki tov. Another verse says that Hashem saw the light, that it was good. Right? Hashem created light on the first day and he saw that it was good. Perush Rizal, right? Perush Rizal, the sages say, and Rashi brings in Chumash, ki tov l'ganuz. Right? What does it mean Hashem saw that it was good? He saw it was good for hiding. Meaning to say that what was this light that Hashem created on the first day? It was called the Or HaGnuz, right? The hidden light of divinity. I guess it wasn't hidden right off the bat, but he hid it as soon as he made it. Why?
Esther Spheres of Gnuzos?
Yeah, it's definitely connected with the Esther Spheres HaGnuzos. But why did he hide it, basically? Because he didn't want it to get into the wrong hands. In other words, with this light, sort of, whatever, there's different reasons. It would take away people's free choice. It's basically having godliness before you at all times. But the concept is that he hid this light, and where did he hide it? This is the light we're discussing. This is the 13 attributes of mercy. This is the Or Ein Sof. He read what kind of light was it? It wasn't sunlight. He didn't create the sun until the fourth day. So this that he said, let there be light, it was beferush, not sunlight. It was ruchnius dika light, spiritual light. And this is the light that we're discussing. This is the innermost will of Hashem. And where did he hide it? Yesh bechol echad ve'echad miYisrael. He ultimately hid it inside of every single Jew. This is the godly soul. Ela shu bechinas hester ve'helim me'od betivo. Just what? It's hidden means to say that this is what you're made up of. This is the first attribute that Hashem created in the world. But He hid it, i.e., inside of your soul. This is a very, very deep, hidden concept of godliness that's inside of your nature. In other words, it doesn't show itself openly. It's hiding inside of you. And what you have to do is reveal this storehouse of Yirat Shamayim. Right? It's basically, it's the man. Right? Who's the man? The man is the Eibishter himself. It's the 10 spheres of Atzilus. It's sitting inside of you. Just what? Just like by Hashem, it's wrapped up in Bria, which is itself wrapped up in Yetzira, which is itself wrapped up in Asiya, and then on top of that you slap a whole Gashmias on top of it and just cover the whole thing. It's exactly the same pattern of concealment of the Atzilus inside of you. That you have this, you are pure Elokus, and all these things are just garments that are, but your job is to reveal this storehouse of Yiras Shamayim that's inside of us. And the problem goes deeper. Yesh mishu b'chinas aveda etzlo. It's not only just merely concealed. Some people, it's pashut lost. Right? It's lost by them. It's a lost object. We just learned the Gemara. Right? Mm-hmm. It's no yeyush, but it's lost. B'chinas galus. And that's what it means. It's in a state of exile. V'alzeh ne'emar ubikashtem, right? We brought out two pasukim to start this new little thing. One was ubikashtem misham es Hashem Elokecha, right? One is you shall search out from there, and the other one was vayar Elokim asa or kitov. He saw the light and it was good. And then we say it's good for hiding. So since it's hidden, then bikashtem misham, you have to check it. You have to go search for it. It's a lost object. Bikashtem misham. Shetibakesh v'techapes. Right, you have to look for it and search for it. Ve'ein chipus ela achad aveda. And there's nothing called, you don't search for something unless it's really lost. Right? Dahainu davar shu avuda etzlo b'chines galus shu b'chines nitzus elokus hanal. And what are you searching for? You're searching for your own self, basically. You're searching for your essential godliness, which is lost inside of you, and you have to search it out. Right? There's a sikha the Rabbi has. He says, Ezu shote, right? Who's a fool, right? Hama'abed kol masha nosnin lo. The definition of a fool, it's not actually a nice word in English, but it's a halachic category of someone called a shote, right? He's patur from mitzvahs and so forth and so on. He's a disabled yid, you know. And what's the definition of the shote? And it says, Hama'abed kol masha nosnin lo. He loses everything you give to him. You give him something, he loses it. Right, and if he can't be responsible to take care of business. So the perush in Chassidus is ma'abid kol ma shenosnim lo. In other words, he's lost all the ma. What's ma? Ma represents chokhmah, basically, the Indian of bittul inside of a person. He loses his ma, right? So unfortunately, we're not only in a situation where we're in a midbar, but we're also a shotet. Basically, you wind up being a fool. What's another parish of shotet, right? Is ein adam over avera elim kei nichnas bo ruach shtus. Shtus, right? A person won't sin unless it enters into a spirit of folly. A fool, right? Guess what? This is what's going on over here. If you're in a midbar, you're a fool. And why is it? Because you have a spirit of shtus, a shote comes over you. And what is a shote? It's a clumsy person, right? Or in this case, whatever, he's forced to be clumsy, but he's a clumsy person that said that everything, he lost it. He had something, you gave him a precious object, and he lost it. What's the precious object? It's your ma. It's your own soul, right? It's very easy to slip into a situation where you're just talking nonsense. And you're just giggling and frivolity and all the four elements, like you said, as you pointed out very well. And as this can attack us from the negative qualities of water, earth, air, and fire. All these things. We can be angry, we can be depressed, we can be all the four elements. And what happens is you just slip, you lose complete sight of reality, which is the ma of your soul, and you start being a fool. Right? So this is, you now are in a situation where you have to hashavas aveda, right? This is what the whole Gemara that we learned is about. You have to return the lost object to yourself. You lost an object. And finding a lost object, if you're the one that's sitting on it waiting for the guy to come back, that's not who you are. You're the guy who lost it. You're looking for it frantically. And if you're not looking for it frantically, it is pashit yeyush, right? And you don't want to have yeyush. You don't want to give up hope. You're not going to give up hope and just forget this whole process and say, I'm just going to go back to school, forget this. Being Jewish was fun, but no, you're not a fool. You're going to look for it. You're going to have to search it out. Right? And this is the Indian of bikashtem misham. You can't just search it out. You have to search it out from there. And then we're going to go into this whole quality of what is sham. It's like basically going to occupy the whole rest of this os. This notion of searching it out from there. You have to search for something after Aveda, which is lost to you. Okay, so after the period. And that's what it says, bikashtem misham es HaShem Elokecha. What are you searching? Zeu es HaShem Elokecha. Shu nimshach b'chines keil, right? The HaShem Elokecha, he says a powerful thing here, the Havaya and Elokim, all that is just different aspects of Kael. And it was really Kael, as I said yesterday, is the highest of all the names. It's even higher than Elokim, it's higher than Havaya. Who remembers why? We talked about it yesterday. We said, what is...
They're connected to different spheres.
What's that?
They're connected to different spheres.
Okay, so Chesed, Gevur, and Tiferes. But why? What is it represented on a higher level? We said that those are really just sort of name tags for three other concepts. The Or Ein Sof is Kael. Elokim is...
Elokim is Malay then.
Elokim is the Tzimtzum. Remember this? And Havaya is what? Yeah, HaShem. Havaya is what?
Oh, it's Tiferes.
Good. It is Tiferes, but what does it represent in this category?
Oh, the Kav?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we have the Or Ein Sof, the Tzimtzum, and the Kav. Right? You guys are all familiar with this little process. Infinite light, too much for the worlds to handle, is contracted by the Tzimtzum. Right? So that's Kael is the Or Ein Sof. The Tzimtzum is Elokim, which contracts all that light. And then a real little reintroduction of a small ray of light, which is called the Kav. That's Yud Kei Vav Kei. So when he says over here that Ubikashtem Misham es HaShem Elokecha, right? You have to seek out from there the Lord your God. It's really all elements of Kael. What you're searching out is Kael, the essential godliness who expresses himself as all these different names of God and different processes of God.
So why are we allowed to use Kael and Elokim, but not Havaya?
Allowed to use them? What do you mean by use them?
Don't we not use them? Don't we replace Havaya with Adonai?
Ooh, don't say that.
Sorry.
That's different. Okay, that's a good question. In other words, why is it that Yud Kei Vav Kei is the Shem HaMaforash? In other words, that's the real name of Hashem.
Right.
That's of all the 7 names of Hashem, that's the ultimate one. Why is it tucked down at the bottom there?
With the Kav.
Right.
With the little ray.
Right. So, does anyone know?
Can you say Ad?
The one that's one who relates the most or something?
Everything's within it.
It's the one that's brought to this world, bring it down.
Okay. They're all true answers.
Past, present, future.
Just an analogy, so we can sort of move on and get this in our minds, we can just have it in mind, the analogy that is given in Sfarim is the idea of a barrel that's filled with wine or something, or water, it's overflowing. It's like, and it starts to come out of the cracks of the barrel, right? So it's so much, it actually starts to push out from the sides, it pushes out from the cracks of the barrel, right? So it says actually that the power that's in that little water that comes out of the crack is more than all the water in the barrel. Because in order for it to come through and break through, and it's because there's so much pressure, that was the little water that basically like represents an extra might of power that's more than just enabled to sit into the barrel, right? So this is the same thing, that this little kav, yes, even though relative to the Or Ein Sof it's nothing, but it's not just relative to the Or Ein Sof, it's the extra strength of the Or Ein Sof that allows it to push through the Tzimtzum and even find light inside of the darkness, which by definition the other light couldn't do. How do you know? The Tzimtzum affected it. It didn't make it through, right?
Only that little light, man.
Right, so it's not just a little light. It's only a little light that can burst through into such a dark place, but it's because ultimately it's even more powerful than the light that couldn't burst through into that dark place. It's similar to what the Rebbe says about our generation, just thinking about it. Like, we're like midgets standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So on one hand, you're a midget. You're nothing. But on the other hand, how did you get here? You came through, the pogroms, you came through fire and brimstone to get here. This little neshama that wound up being alive in this generation, he's a midget who has all the power of all the generations and more so. Right? It's like you can't underestimate what that drop is. Even though if you compare it to what came before it, it's nothing. It's standing on the shoulders of giants. Okay. So we are looking for the lost object. And the Bikashta Misham, you have to look from there to find HaShem Elokecha. Which dwells inside of every man, which is the life of his very godly soul, as we said. Hine hakasuv omer bikashta misham. So what's this business of sham? Sham daika. Why do you have to search from there? Where's there? Hikashem she'ir shalacha peis acher aveda limtzo zulas b'makom shene'ebda. Just like you can't search around for an object and find it in a place that you didn't lose it. And I always say this story at this time because I heard it from my Rosh Yeshiva, and this is the story. You're driving down the highway and you see, right, there's a guy sitting there frantically searching for something, his keys. You stop, you pull over, you try to help, you say, what's wrong, You say, I lost my keys. He's frantic. He said, okay, listen, I'm a good Samaritan, I'm going to help you look for them. So the two of them start looking for the keys now. And then, there's two cars on the side of the road. The next guy comes down. He sees there's something going on. He stops and pulls over. And he starts joining them looking for the keys. And by the time you know it, there's 10 different cars. They're all looking for the keys, scouring the land. One guy pops his head up and he says, Mister, where'd you lose your keys? He says, I lost them on the other side of the street. Everyone starts screaming. He says, what are you doing? He says, well, the light's over here. Okay. So this is the analogy of this line. I don't know. I think it's just, you have to tell that story at this juncture of the mimer. But yeah, you've heard that one before. It sounds like you're actually finishing my sentences. You maybe next time you'll tell it, because I don't tell jokes so good. I'm basically a flat there. Okay, but anyway, the idea is that of course it's very, very nogea, this story, to what we're saying. It's not just a story. It's extremely, unfortunately, true about all of us. A person is happy to do tshuva. Literally, a guy came to my house. It's Elul. He's like, you know what? It's a new leaf. I'm going to turn over a leaf. I'm divorcing my wife.
What?
Yeah. Might as well look for it on the other side of the road. I don't think that's where you lost it. In other words, you got to go and find it where you lost it. You can't. That's not what it means to do tshuva, right? That's not what it means to do tshuva. To go look for an object where it's light. You say, oh, I'm going to start over. If there's no problems in my new life without a wife, everything's good over there. Trust me, it didn't even happen yet. Right? You got to go in the dark. That's where you have to go do tshuva from. Where you lost your ma, right? The place where your godly soul was all covered up by all the foolish things that got you into a situation that he wanted to get divorced. That's where he has to start looking for his keys. Sad story. I think it's going to be okay with them. Anyway, Kach lo yasig or pnei Hashem. He says, so too, a person cannot grasp the light of Hashem, v'shtiya avaso elav, and to regain your love for Him, v'yiraso al panav, and His fear should be upon your face, ki im acher hachipus techila. You have to search first. You will not just, it's never going to be, so to speak, a walk in the park, maybe a walk in the field, but not a walk in the park to do tshuva, because you must get right into the issues of your life. What is your problem? And it's not a matter of turning the next chapter of your life and walking away from your problem. That's a very common escapism way of dealing with the situation, and it makes you feel like you're all good now. But as everybody knows, those things are going to come right back unless you deal with them, because that's where you lost your ma. That's where your godly soul doesn't get to come out. You have to take care of the problem. Train. Wow. Okay. And this is the inyan of al-acher achipus. You have to. It only comes after a search b'makum shna avda, from the place that it was lost.
Rabbi, is there another copy? The back copy?
Yeah, I made 10 copies yesterday.
No, the back.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you're right. I made 5 of those, so they should be floating around somewhere.
Do you see any copies?
The golden ticket.
So I usually I try and collect them because we have to do chipus acher aveda every single day over here. Unfortunately, we did not learn our lesson in lost objects. But
because they're like.
Anyway,
wait.
the truth is, there's probably 4 or 5 guys in a cave somewhere hovering over their copy of Likutei Torah. That's why they're not in class.
They just have the backside.
You got some? Okay, let's. All right. Anyway, in the meantime, you have to share. So anyway, this is. Oh, there you go. Excellent. All right. This is chipus acher b'makom shna evda, in the place where it was lost. Al derech mashakasu nechbasa derachenu, as it says in the pasuk, we have to search. Again, chipus is in you have lost. You have to search in your ways. Look deeply into your ways. In other words, just simply, what's going on with your daily seder. Let's just start. We're yeshiva bachrim over here. First of all, you know where you're supposed to be and when. That's more than most people can say, right? Most people are just lost. They're walking around, they don't know what to do with themselves. At least you guys know where you're supposed to be. So you can look at through the Seder. How much am I where I'm supposed to be and how much where I'm not supposed to be? And in just a similar way, you could say how much am I where I'm supposed to be in my thoughts. There's certain thoughts you're not allowed to think. You know that? Like depressing ones. Where am I? Where am I? Where I'm supposed to be? There's certain times when what's coming out of your mouth, that's not where you're supposed to be. So it literally, like a yeshiva, we always say that the one thing you learn from yeshiva more than anything else is the inyan of seder, right? The keeping a seder is almost more important than everything you learn in yeshiva. And why is it? Because this is lamed base of Likutei Torah. Because that's what it means to know where you are and where you're supposed to be. It's basically having this higher, spotlight on you, keeping track of you, knowing where you're supposed to be at all times. And I don't just mean physically, right? I mean spiritually, where you're supposed to be. It's having the ma in mind. If you know there's a clock and you're on the clock, you're going to behave differently. That's why people get lost. They just push it. They think they're off the clock. They think they're, it's like time off. Like Rabbi Gorenstein was saying, we have a break. He says, by the way, it's just a break. You don't actually have a break from being Jewish in your 10-day break of yeshiva. You just don't have to come to class. So this is the inyan. Sheyafashpesh b'maasav. You have to look through your deeds. Diburav, machshavosav, your speech and your thoughts. Sha'avru v'chalfu miyom hayoso. That's a strong ask. You have to look through your thoughts, speech, and actions that passed by you from the day that you were, meaning from the moment of birth. What's your seder been like since the moment of birth, and how much have you kept it? And if you haven't, you have to go back into that place and search out from there, from the place that you lost it, where the lights are off. Asher lo tovim, that were not good. V'zehu bikashta misham. That's what it means. You have to search from there. Go back to the beginning. Ki loshin zeh hu davar shiachol mamish lehira'os elav be'etzba'o asher yomer alav ki hu zeh. Right? So he's getting into a whole thing now. What's zeh? Sham, which is like our concept right now, is in relationship to the word zeh, right? So sham and zeh are sort of opposites. This and there, right? I guess it would be here and there, but it's basically this which is before you, and there which that is not before you. So he says, in truth, the word zeh, this, goes on something that you're able to point to it with your finger and say to it, ki hu zeh, this is it. And this is an interesting line. He says, "Ve'iyafshar lomer kach rak al HaKadosh Baruch Hu." The only thing you can truly say, this is it, is Hashem. Because that's the only thing which is truly found in every place. And it's the only thing that's truly found in any place. Right? And so, Sham is actually closer to you, unfortunately, than you think it is. Even though it's over there, it's really everywhere. Because we mistake the Zeh, which is the Eibishter and the Kedusha and the holiness of the reality which is before us, we mistake it with Sham. We think that it's another guy, or a plate of food, or something to talk about. We basically just like caught in the mirage of the klippas which surround us, and really we're not living in reality. If you were living in reality, you would be living with Shivisi Hashem Lanegdi Samid. I place Hashem before me always. This ticking clock of the Seder is literally in my brain every second. I know where I am. I know what is before me. Zeh is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To slip out of that is to go over there somewhere. You could be standing right where you are, but you're over there. You left the place of Kedusha. Where do we see the union of Zeh? As it says, Zeh Keli V'Anveyu. When the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim, we were going on the sea, we screamed out the song of the sea, this is my God and I will glorify Him. Meaning to say they weren't looking at anything of the world anymore. You know, they're standing in the middle of a split sea, or they're right on the other side of it, and they're saying, this is God. I'm not fooled by any world anymore at this point. I know that I'm standing in front of the Eibishter and nothing else. Because His glory fills the whole world. But the place where the klippas reside is called Sham. That's what it means, Sham. Some over there. That's what it means you have to search Hashem from over there. In other words, the over there of your life. The second you slipped out of the proper godly consciousness and you went into just being a normal human being, basically. Right? It's pretty easy to do because we are normal human beings. So we're living in Sham. You know, we're not even living here. We're living over there most of our days.
Is Sham considered like the desert?
Yeah. Sham is the desert.
Sham is the desert.
Zeh is the city. Kolomar, what does it mean, Sham? Really? Amok ma'od lamata. You're deep, far below. In other words, you're in some pushed off place of klippas. V'zeu shidar shirazal. That's what the sages said on the pasuk Karu Sham Paro Hevir Hamoed. So over there is a verse discussing. I think it's in Zechariah. It's discussing the Indian of whatever that Paro was supposed to take care of something at a certain appointed time, and he didn't. So it says Havira Moed. The time passed, but the Alter is going into a completely different place with it. He says Paro Sham Paro. So what do we already right away see? Sham is connected with Paro. It literally means Paro called over there, or they called there to about Paro, right? But whatever it is. Sham equals Paro. Paro is the place of Klippas Sham. And what did Paro do? Hevir HaMoed. He moved over the Moed, or he passed by the Moed. What does it mean? Ratzalomar haderich shel HaMoed v'simcha. Moed is the way of godliness. Moed means like a Yom Tov. And true godly simcha is called a Moed. The Oel Moed, the place where Hashem dwells. And he was Havir. He moved over, he crossed over the Moed to the Simcha Shel Holus. He made it into a Simcha, instead of a Simcha of Kedusha, he made it into a Simcha of folly, of frivolity. Right? He just took himself out of the godly consciousness, he lost his he lost his mind, and he went into a place of frivolity. This is what it means, Sham. He went over there. Right? And, it's just about being a mensch, basically. You gotta always be consistent, you know? Even when there's no yeshiva going on, and the rabbis aren't here, you know, you still have to only have words of Torah coming out of your mouth. And you still have to keep the Seder, whatever Seder it is, that, you know, it's something that we unfortunately rely on external forces to keep us in the game, which is totally respectable and necessary at a certain point in a person's life. but it's not going to fly because really this is just training grounds. You're on your own. You have to be able to realign yourself constantly to the truth and stay connected, right? And be mamash an OL moed for other people, because everybody's lost. So not only do you not need to get dragged around with them being lost, which is so easy to do, you have to be so solidly pegged into the ground that other people can find respite in your tent of ma. Anyway, v'zeu inyan b'midbar hazeh itamu. Right? So this is going on an inyan of, it means that in this desert, right, you will be it come to an end, basically. Itamu means it comes to an end. It's talking again, the Rebbe's sort of reversing the simple meaning of a lot of these verses here, but he goes on. It's talking about the spies, and it's basically saying in this desert you're done. Like the whole generation is finished. Bamidbar hazeh, you're finished, right? The Rebbe takes it into a different place. Perush al yidei diburi osios hatafila, right? That shehu bechinas midbar hazeh, right? That midbar hazeh, we're also messing with our minds a little bit here because midbar, which was a bad thing, now for a moment is going to become a good thing. Why? Because it's not midbar, it's midbar hazeh, right? It's the midbar of zeh now. Why is it called a midbar? Lashon dibor. In other words, midbar comes from the word to speak. So it's basically speech of holiness in davening. It's referring to words of tefillah, right? What's that? Midaber hazeh. Yeah. So the idea is that when a person davens, why suddenly davening? Because when a person wakes up in the morning, it says, what are you compared to? You're compared like to Bameh Nechashev. It says, what are you compared to? You're compared to a Bama. Not Obama, although it could be worse. But a Bama is an altar of idol worship. And it says when a person wakes up, that his soul is still in his nose. It says it didn't like flush it out through his body, which means his godly soul is basically constricted and concealed. You just got up. You're not yourself yet. So you have to daven. And what does davening do? It just pour out osios of Torah. Your soul gets to breathe and basically flush itself out through your body. That's called b'midbar hazeh yitam. It's called all of a sudden you go into like an oasis of zeh. You're just, why is it that we just sit there and just say words and words? We said those words yesterday, right? What's the point of saying the same words over and over and over again? It's a huge tipul, it's a refuah to your thirsty soul, which woke up and sort of got disconnected from your consciousness, your ma, and so you just start to sort of hammer it with words and 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 words of kedusha, in order to put yourself in the midbar hazeh, to suddenly put yourself in a godly consciousness. You can't have a day without that. You're not allowed to do any business. You're not even allowed to say hello to your friend until you do this to yourself, because you're not whole. It's impossible for you to be in a state of ma until you just sort of flush your system out with osios of tefillah. And this, you say, well, I don't feel it when I'm davening. You do feel it when you're davening. Sitting there and saying all those words has a huge effect on you. How much more so if you actually get into it and sort of meditate on their meaning. But even if you don't so much, the act of putting on tefillin and standing there and mamish being like a little motor of godly words has a huge effect on you. It puts you into a godly consciousness. Yeah.
As I understood it previously, to achieve this amount, we have to make 100 brachot, which would only occur at the end of the day.
No. We actually corrected ourselves on that. We said every bracha is the inyan of accessing this. To access it in full, you go to a level of you do it 100 times. But every bracha is a little piece of that level of 100 that we spoke about in the other minor. It's not that you have to get to the end.
Can Torah be part of?
Sure, of course, Torah. But he's saying like when you're getting out, the first thing you do is daven. Even this, by the way, I don't know if you know it, but we're davening right now.
Yeah.
The rule is you're not really, there isn't the inyan of Torah before tefillah doesn't really have the real ikar din of limun Torah. Because you're not really in a state. It says you go to the Beit Knesset to the Beis Medrash. You have to daven before you learn. So that's what we don't. You see, we're not sitting here learning a daf Gemara right now. We're learning something which is really part of our davening. In other words, we don't want to just be a robot saying the words, because it's so much more powerful when you say those words and you actually have godly concepts in your mind and Elul on your head in a deep way, and you want to change, and those words are now infused with thoughts and emotions So this is all part of davening, what we're doing right now. Anyway, let's just finish this line. So it says, "B'midbar hazeh yitamu." In this desert, you will come to an end. But really, since it's talking about davening, which is osios of tefillah, k'mosh kasu zeh keili, as we just said, the Indian of zeh refers to this is my God. The kain be'esek haTorah. Here you go. And also the learning Torah that comes afterwards, as it says in Parshas Matos, leimur zeh hadavar. It's also when it comes to Torah, we say zeh hadavar. This is the words of Torah. Al yedei zeh yitamu. What do we say yitamu means? It means you're going to, so to speak, die in this desert. Yitamu also does not only mean yitamu, because that wouldn't really make sense. In this desert of tefillah, you're going to die. Hainu kamosh kesu b'zohar shalach. Rather, it means, like it says in the Zohar, shiu b'chines tamim tiyeh. The word yitamu can mean to come to an end. It also can mean tamim, like you're tamimim. You become pure and whole. So in the midbar of zeh, you become tamim, right? Suddenly, what is tamim? It means you're connected, basically. All parts of you are simple with Hashem. You don't have any extraneous sort of sneak around, get into this mischief and that mischief. You become tamim with Hashem. V'sham yamusu. And then it says what? Going on in the story of the spies, it says there they will die. Right? That in this desert you're going to come to an end, and there you will die. We're rereading this line, right? Bringing mamish the sin of the spies to the most beautiful possible perush. So first of all, b'midbar hazeh, you're going to become tamim, and now sham yamusu. What does this mean? Nefilas apayim. So this is referring to the part of davening called nefilas apayim, tachnu, when you fall on your face. I don't know if everyone is familiar with the sort of spiritual significance of falling on your face. But it's a very high thing, and the idea is that even after the Shemona, you go up the ladder of first you're in the Psuki de Zimra, then the blessings of the Shema, then the Shema itself, then all of a sudden you go into what's called a Bittul B'Metzias, a total self-nullity in what? The Shemona Esrei. But the idea is that since you're in the Shemona Esrei, your eyes are closed and you're gone from the world. The Rebbe speaks about there's still a certain, and your Bittul B'Metzias, there's still like a possible flaw that could come out from that scenario, which is when you actually meet the world again, you're not going to be able to come out of yeshiva and go into the world and be a normal, adapted human being. Your yeshiva self and your Shemona Esrei self is one thing, and facing the cold, harsh realities of the world is another thing, and therefore you realize that your Bittul and Shemona Esrei was not true because it didn't continue into your real life. So that's what nefilas apayim is. That's what tachnun is. When you go down on your face, and you basically that whole move even of going down. It's like you're opening your eyes and you're going down into the world, and it's the idea of raising up what are you saying after Hashamnu Bagadnu, right? Like all the aspects of your broken self, you go down and prostrate yourself, and you are able to bring that godliness also into the world. So that's the meaning of it. So the idea of Sham Yamusu, there they will die, referring to the spies. It's referring in davening, just like Midbar Hazeh is referring to tefillah. Sham Yamusu is referring to this part of tefillah where you go down and you're able to now elevate the world. Right? You're able to take this bittul and drive it right into the world. Shu halas nitzutzim, which is called the elevation of the spark, shenaf l'bechinas sham, which fell into the realm of Sham. What does it say? Sham Yamusu. Right? Your Sham will die. Right? That's what it means. When you go into davening, midbar hazeh yitamu, you're going to become tamim because you're in an oasis of zeh, and your sham is going to yamusu. Your sham is going to die. And why? Because al yedei elech Hashem nafshi yavsa. What do you say when you go down into this prostrated position? You say elecha Hashem nafshi esa. To you, Hashem, I lift my soul. In other words, you're back to the shivisi Hashem lenegdi summit. You get to a point where all I have before me is you, Hashem. That's what you say. The words that come out of your mouth is, I lift my soul to you. Once your soul is back, you bring the godliness into your apologetic state. What are the pastors doing? You're basically lowering yourself because you sinned, right? You're prostrating yourself because the notion is when you fall on your face, it's because you can't handle the deep revelation of the truth and seeing yourself and what you've done in the presence of that. And you're apologetic. You're remorseful. So you lift your soul to Hashem and you bring up all those sparks. The Sham dies. You come out of the broken consciousness and you reattach yourself to the true reality. And that's what it says. One more line. We'll just finish this. When it came to Mitzrayim, it says, you took us out of Sham. You took us out of there. You'll see in the Torah now that you know this little secret Hasidic word. All the Shams is referring to the Klippas. And when he took us out of there, when he took us out of Mitzrayim, it's called there, out of a constrained consciousness of worldliness. Ki be'emes hotzi osanim bechinas sham l'dafka bo yizbar. Because in truth, what he did was he took us out of a level of sham to have us cling to Hashem, blessed be He.
I have a question. The general question I heard from yesterday.
Good to have you back.
But it's like maybe like a non-believer question. It's like why are we doing shul now when we kind of know next year people are gonna like sin in one way or form? What's the point of just going on? Like, I'm saying like
living a lie? Like
it's like some people like yeah, we're precious, you know, like and then
That's why I said this line.